Master, visiting masters, liverymen, honoured and distinguished guests, welcome to Baker's Hall. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Master of the Worship Company of Baker's for about 5 weeks. You are going to be well and truly entertained and informed by the lecture this evening, and I hope you enjoy your evening at Baker's Hall. You are quite safe here. It won't catch fire. John Piper did those 3 windows. The first one is the 1666 fire of London, which we didn't see. The second one is another fire in 1715, which started in an oil warehouse nearer the river. Again, nothing to do with us. And the third one commemorates the bombing during the war in 1940. This hall was rebuilt in 1963, and there's been no trouble since then, so you're all very welcome. I'm afraid I apologise to the Master and to you. I have just enjoy yourself.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening everybody. I'm delighted to see so many of you here. I just wanted to say a couple of words to set the scene for Guy and then turn over to him, so I should be quite brief. I've spent all of my life basically dealing with information technology in one form or another, and given my interest in that side of things together with marketing, I think it's inevitable that my theme for this year would talk about the convergence of IT and marketing, and I entitled it 2020 CMO. Basically because we need to look a little bit into the future, can't look too far, things are changing too quickly, but we can't just stand where we are today. Now, my feeling, and I think it's borne out by the fact that we have, I counted them, over 30 different livery companies that are represented here tonight. This is a common problem. All our professions are facing the impact of what one calls the new technology, the new information technology. This is something which has raised questions that I think we've got framework listeners here. I suspect that the Luddites were having the same sort of conversation. It's not a new problem. There are risks and opportunities, changes, all sorts in every type of technology that comes along. And I think that you can see that this doesn't just deal with marketing. But from my point of view, I wanted to look at this. Is there symbiosis between IT and marketing? Is there convergence? Is there conflict? Is one discipline going to win out over another? And this is what I've asked Guy to talk about tonight. Guy has been, like me, all his life in information technology in one guise or another. He's worked as a colleague with me in Fujitsu for a long time in marketing IT, if you like. And he's now European CMO for Cognizant, the global software company. And I asked him to give us an idea how he sees as a practicing CMO the effect of this technology on marketing. I hope there are going to be lots of questions afterwards, but I'm now going to turn over to Guy and leave him to you. Thank you very much.
I'd say first, I noticed some very formal dresswear and I'm looking a little more casual. I did see the guidance, which was business attire. This is business attire. In fact, t-shirts and jeans are increasingly becoming business attire in digital technology. Second thing I'll just say in way of introduction before the lecture starts is that I just had a deja vu as Richard was talking. Because Richard was a real champion of marketing at Fujitsu. And it makes your life a lot easier if you've got somebody who, at the top, really values the function. That'll come through what I'm talking about. But I remember 2 or 3 instances where Richard was explaining marketing to Japanese colleagues. And the conception of marketing in Japan was totally different. And it was fascinating. He would say, you just don't understand marketing. And he was absolutely right, they didn't. And it took me a long time to try and get those colleagues in Japan to the same level of understanding that Richard started with. But having that support was invaluable. So, to get started. Firstly, I'd like to thank Richard and the worshipful company of marketers for this opportunity to speak to you today in this wonderful setting. This is all new to me. I know almost nothing about the worshipful company of marketers. So, it's a terrific opportunity and experience for me to talk to you today. And one of the benefits of being asked to give a lecture like this is that it gives you the chance to pause and think, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this for a living? And this is becoming an ever more pressing question because I've got a 5-year-old daughter and there's going to be a time where she stops me and says, so what is the work you do, Jack? And to answer, my job is to establish a major technology company as a leading digital transformation partner for C-suite executives. He's not going to cut it for us. So I'm hoping that this exercise will help give me some of the clarity I'm going to need to explain to Olivia what I do for a living. So marketing generally doesn't get a good press. As a term, it's commonly used to refer to something as superficial, trivial, or lacking in substance. Coca-Cola recently were reported to be using cannabis in a new pain-killing drink, and that was reported on 5 Live as just being marketing. Manchester United are beginning to alienate their fans to a degree, and many of the fans say the club has lost its essence, it's just about marketing. Donald Trump, 5,000 lives and counting, is often credited for being all about marketing. So marketing gets a very negative press, and marketing in the services sector has additional problems, often either misunderstood as at best demand generation, at worst just events and brochures, or maligned, something that a budget that we can cut, a budget that we can do without. So why do it? Because in my mind it matters, it really does, and it matters in spite of these issues. And this evening I'm going to try and address the marketing discipline as a whole, but my experience is clearly in the technology sector, with companies like Sony, IBM, Fujitsu, and now Cognizant. So the majority has been concerned with services. In other words, how to promote people who solve problems or create solutions with technology. That's what I've been doing. So naturally, that experience covers my perspective on marketing. So I'm not going to talk about marketing toothpaste or chocolate bars, but some of these principles apply. So in summary, I will argue that marketing matters in the 21st century. Not in the same way as medical research or ameliorating the effects of climate change, but insofar as it is marketing which enables an organisation to be coherent and grounded. Put simply, marketing is the one function which orientates organisations towards the purpose of attaining and retaining customers. I also argue that marketing departments are often incoherent as they respond to irrational demands and short-term pressures. I believe that the best marketing is, by contrast, simple in conception, but nonetheless very hard to execute. I will further argue that new technologies have often marginalised marketing in the past, although we got cause. But now I believe that marketing faces its biggest challenge, arguably an existential challenge. And the biggest challenge since the inception of the profession, as such it can be called, as a confluence of technologies threaten to disintermediate the role of marketing altogether. However, I believe that marketing can still thrive if we remember our primary function is to keep in mind the best and simplest models for inspiration, to keep our primary function in mind, keep in mind the best and simplest models for inspiration, and stay focused on connecting with customers. So I believe that marketing matters. As I say, the best marketing orientates organisations towards their customers and markets where they engage with them. It provides coherence and direction based on simple principles. Know your customer. Create something that they need or want. Make your offering clear and compelling. Deliver value for money. Be easy for them to find. And follow through and keep them loyal. Now, these are often forgotten by marketers who focus on narrow specialisms, whether it's portfolio marketing, promotional marketing, advertising. But I think, and there is a reason I picked this. I picked the French one. It's an inspiration to me. It actually is a thought that occurred to me when I was in Lyon a few years back. And it occurred to me that the best template for great marketing is to be found in very, very simple models. This is boulangerie, let's say in Lyon. And the owner of this boulangerie knows everything that they need to know about their customers. They provide the product and service required, perfectly tailored, every day without fail. And when those customer preferences change, they adapt. So that's a great example of marketing. And for me, it's an inspiration. A bad example comes from, and this company does lots of wonderful things, so I don't want to be absolutely critical, but in this respect, this was, for me, a oversight. The company is Sky. Sky is a company that made over $1 billion in profit last year, so it's undoubtedly successful. I recently let them know that I was planning to move house and wanted to transfer Sky TV to my new home. I tried to call them 2 weeks before the move, only to be directed to their website. Having retrieved an account ID that I never knew about, I was then directed from the website to Facebook Messenger on my phone. And I do use Facebook Messenger, and I'm obviously comfortable with technology, so I use that at their request. And as I made my inquiry, I discovered that it took between 40 and 60 minutes for every question to be answered. And it occurs to me, it's like an experiment in Einsteinian relativity. So I've often wondered what it would be like where if I stayed on planet Earth and somebody travelled a distance and time is travelling more slowly for me than it is for them, what would it be like? Now I know. So as a consequence of this wonderful experiment, I contacted Virgin TV, who came within a day of the move, and they were able to provide the solutions I wanted. So Sky had the clearest possible signal that the valued customer of over 10 years was at risk, and their response minimised the cost of this customer touch point and getting to use the app. Outcome, annoyed customer goes somewhere else. Which is extraordinary when you think about it, because the data is there for them to make a distinction between somebody who's moving house and somebody who's making a fairly trivial inquiry. But they made no distinction. I was just an expense that had to be reduced, and therefore they lost customer. I calculated that the lifetime value of my business with them was well over £1,000. And they lost that simply because they wanted to reduce the cost of talking to them. So Sky is not a stupid company. The issue is scale, multiplied by complexity, multiplied by speed of change. Those are the issues that Sky is competing with, that the boulangerie to some extent is not. But marketing as a discipline emerged from the need for enterprises to engage with customers and prospects remotely, and to do so in vast numbers across the world's most prosperous and technically advanced country, the United States. Along with scale comes complexity. With complexity comes specialisation. With specialisation comes silo thinking, and the fine art of completely missing the point. All of this against a backdrop of intense and increasing competition and accelerating technology-driven change. And each generation of marketeers, in my opinion, is learning the fundamentals known by the French boulangerie, and making huge mistakes along the way, using each technology as it arises in the way that Sky is doing. And often, it is said that the first users and abusers of any new technology are the poor and gambling industries. And I would have to say that marketing is a very close third behind those sinners. Think of the intrusions of direct mail, telemarketing, email marketing, and each one abusing a perfectly valid way of connecting people. And now we're doing it with social media and mobile apps, each of which risk either being saturated with nonsense or being used simply to lower the cost of talking to people. So at its best, marketing counterbalances other groups who are driven by legitimate internal agendas, from design through production and sales. We provide perspectives on where the marketing is going and represent the customer point of view. We provide this orientation through intelligence, insight, and implementation into product, price, promotion, place, and any other of the P's that have been added to that list in recent times. Sales directors will often claim special insight into their customers. CFOs will claim that they see the fundamentals of profit and loss, and CIOs will claim that they can see the risks and opportunities offered by new technology, which is integral to any business today. All of these claims are true, but only marketing maintains a focus on reaching and satisfying those customers. In large technology companies, the value of the marketing discipline is often missed, and the strategic function of marketing performed to varying levels of effectiveness by other functions. To offset this, as a marketing leader, you have to be deeply credible and passionately committed to your point of view. You have to live with scepticism from people who are often more valued by the business. And this means that the best marketeers are often have the clarity and sense of purpose of a Jesuit in 18th century Japan. And in my experience, there are three CMO archetypes. There's the show person who wants to put on a big show. There's the salesperson, Monkey, whose credibility comes from their understanding of the sales process. And there's the strategist, whose credibility and magic comes from their big picture thinking. And I believe all the best marketeers, or any marketeer, has a bias towards one of those archetypes, but the best are able to achieve a blend and lean towards one or other at the time that most suits. Notwithstanding that, marketing is often its own worst enemy. Portfolio marketing, which produces person years of PowerPoint charts which actually have no impact on what we go and sell. Brand campaigns which have no connection to what the customer actually sees. In recent years, marketing has often been subordinated to CRM systems, customer relationship management systems, which are deployed primarily, in my opinion, to reduce the cost of customer interaction and manage pipeline. CRM, in my opinion, better named customer relationship minimization, has often been used primarily to reduce the cost of sale. Not a bad objective. Very important for large enterprises to make that work as efficiently as possible. And to manage opportunities, again, very, very healthy. But what it doesn't do, and very rarely does, is to provide deeper insights into the customer in order to enable their needs to be satisfied and new opportunities to be identified. In fact, quite the opposite. Because what I see, and I've seen this for years, first at IBM and then beyond, the motivation of any account manager who uses a customer relationship management system is to convert leads into wins with maximum efficiency and minimal interference from senior management. Consequently, the incentive to look for new leads is low, and the disincentive to put that lead onto a system where they're going to be reviewed to death for the next 18 months is very, very low. So in addition, marketing and technology companies is often its own worst enemy, and I think this is because complexity blinds you to purpose. And I do see this, I have to be honest, in the marketing function. I recall a major technology event. I don't know whether we've got anybody at Fujitsu here, apart from those who've worked there before. Fujitsu Forum was the event, and I put a simple request out to the product and services manager, because I was managing the event, just complete this very simple form saying what were they going to showcase at the event on their stands, and why a visitor would be interested. And the form I got was absolutely incoherent. And somehow, although I think that was absolutely central to their job, they couldn't see that I was offering them the opportunity to articulate the essence of their job in a very simple question. And there was a disconnect, and it happens, as I say, because of complexity. Now, Philip Oliver was my CMO at Fujitsu, and I was very lucky to work with him because he really asked you to think and placed a very high premium on clarity of thought. And he used to say that clarity requires simplicity, but to get to simplicity requires a lot of hard work. And he was absolutely right. I remember one example, a colleague of mine said, gone to see Philip with a long presentation, starting at the beginning. Philip says, just hold on a minute. Tell me where you want to go, and I'll tell you where I want to go with you. It's that kind of clarity. You don't want to go through a long presentation. Just tell me where you're trying to go. So he was inspiring. And in my area of brand marketing, the simplest questions need to be asked, but they are the most difficult to answer. And often you've got to fight against your company to get the answers. Always best to frame them in plain English, avoid jargon such as value propositions, message platforms, positioning, content marketing. It just locks you into your own echo chamber. So the questions I've got to think about are, who are we trying to talk to? What is concerning you? What have we got to say that's going to interest them? Is it compelling? Is it differentiated from what others are saying in the same space? Can we be credible in saying this? And how do we evidence that credibility? And finally, what incentive do any of them have to respond to what we've got to say? And much business-to-business marketing communications fails because some or all of these questions have never been asked, much less answered. As marketers, we have to fight against often very culturally viewed tendencies in the company to resist these questions and get answers, otherwise we can't do justice to the company in the market. That's all very critical of marketing. I want to give a good example. This is something that, an example of old school marketing, direct mail. Most of which, probably for me, I suspect you go straight to recycling. But this was also the least propitious time for any kind of marketing in 2008, just as the crash had happened. And an edition of Hard Times, Charles Dickens, arrived in the mail for me at the office. And a careful look shows my name, Hard Times for Guy Daniels. To write it was hard at that time. My curiosity was piqued, and I looked inside, and it said, talk of recession was growing louder. Mr. Daniels was all too aware of the challenges facing him. His situation was not hopeless. Then goes on to introduce me to an agency called Underdog Creative, offering a more prudent use of advertising budgets with the talent of a big agency but without the costs. And they got under my radar for this. And at the back of this there are customer references. Everything, at the very time where direct mail would be forgotten, they found a way to make a connection. And the consequence is they got a face-to-face meeting. I was very keen to work with them. It was only Fujitsu's restrictive procurement policies to stop this progressing. So technology has always been fundamental to marketing, specifically as a mediator with customers to markets. Marketing is transformed by each technological advance in communications because fundamentally our purpose is about creating connections with people. So my dad was the marketing executive at Round Macintosh in the 70s and 80s. And at that time, one TV advertising channel and a limited number of print titles were the only means to reach a mass audience. An explosion of print and TV channels changed that game. And then the internet transformed it again, then social media again. Each time, marketing has to adapt and evolve completely new methodologies. Technology has always transformed markets throughout my lifetime. The old pest models, you always used to force it or request that you consider technology alongside other forces such as politics, economics and society. However, technologies are approaching to the point where in some cases they are becoming the market itself. This is qualitatively and quantitatively different. You look at the way that Facebook and Google work. They are not just marketing, they are the market. I can't do business without Google. You can't find anything without Google. And they're monetizing that boundary, creating vast data. Similarly with Facebook, they are becoming the market. So this is different. Now they're called, now one thing that's not changed, fast-moving consumer goods have always used data to anticipate behaviours. For many years, Mars have been able to calibrate the revenue and profit impact of minor changes to packaging. They cut down the size of a Mars bar and they can predict the value of that and the returns and the profit and loss. Supermarkets have been able to establish premium locations for toothpaste where there aren't. What is new is the shift from predictions through correlation to prediction based on precise behaviours. And this is based on vast amounts of data that we give away without recognising it. This means targeting you in a segment of one based on what you actually did. That is absolutely radically different from anything we've known before. Marketing is all about heuristics. It's about finding shortcuts to get to your customer, like segmentation or targeting. And they found ways to get to me based on what I know and what I like and what I do. So this is completely different. Over 10 years ago, Last FM told me it knew what music I would like because it knew the listening habits of thousands of people who listen to exactly the same music I like. I was partially convinced. Now, every week, Apple Music introduces me to music I love based on the habits of millions of people with similar preferences and algorithms that are able to place me into a self-created segment of one. And although one thing that I would say does diminish, because the quality of music I get is exceptional, and by definition it's based on what I like, and I get more of what I like. But the passion of pursuit does go. So there is a magic that goes. Just trying to pursue a piece of music you've heard and trying to find that music, that goes. It's also commonly known that Amazon can predict your taste in literature better than your partner. That's a fact, and it's been proven. And who knows what Google and Facebook know about us, but what we can be sure is it's in many respects a whole lot more than we do ourselves. And we've given this insight, as I say, we've given this away unknowingly. Currently, these companies have power of intrusion undreamt of by the most advanced states. As Peter Parker's uncle says to Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. However, the guiding principles of Google, don't be evil, or Facebook, bringing the world close together, suggests the ethical outlook of a teenager, rather than the kind of ethical profundity that will be required to manage this kind of responsibility. So what does this mean for marketing? Well, the digital technologies, including big data, analytics, artificial intelligence, connected products, are facilitating a paradigm shift in insight and intelligence of our customers, and also, curiously, enabling those customers to understand those organisations in return. And that's something large organisations will have to get used to. This is to some extent bi-directional. Every enterprise is in some respects becoming a data company. This means they're going to have to provide data services alongside their traditional product or service, whether it's a car or insurance policy. These services will be traded and in many cases will transform the product or service altogether. And it's now imperative for large enterprises to integrate, mine and exploit data, which can enable them to develop new services and new business models, because if they don't, somebody else will. Artificial intelligence is being applied to automate decisions and choices that we would otherwise make with our finite mental capacities. The better a system knows us, the better choices it can make on our behalf. However, the ethical implications are only just being understood. These ethical dilemmas will need to be anticipated up front and embedded in the very algorithms these companies use. And this is going to require bringing completely different disciplines together: philosophers, lawyers, software designers. So far, these algorithms have been designed by very, very intelligent software designers. Those other inputs haven't come into play. They'll have to. And in some respects, traditional enterprises are actually better equipped for these challenges than digital natives, because they've evolved a richer sense of corporate purpose and more effective governance through their years of existence. So there is hope for large enterprises, because they are very, very worried about what new entrants, digital entrants, will do to them. So on the one hand, we have writers like Yuval Noah Harari, Homo Deus, and Max Tegmark, Life 3.0, who predict that AI will allow organisations to hack into our pre-conscious minds and undermine our free will itself. On the other hand, the Sky example shows that there's still a huge headroom for marketing, the best marketing, to help enterprises talk sense to their customers. For several years, solutions from organizations like Salesforce, Adobe, and Oracle have successfully offered a degree of automation for enterprises to interact with their customer, but typically addressing only one channel at a time: the call center, email, websites. We can now use marketing automation for large organizations. This is what we're doing at Cognizant. Marketing automation software is able to detect interest within an organization, person by person. It does that by paying attention to the responses that individuals within that organization are making to responses to email, white papers that are sent to them, or events that they've attended. And that allows an organization like Cognizant to build a profile within GDPR constraints of those individuals and what is likely to trigger their interest. So the consequence of that, we're moving from a model where marketing is the poor relation to the sales function, to one in which, in large enterprises, marketing will be handing profiles of organizations and individuals within those organizations and directing salespeople to go talk to them and explaining to them what they should talk about. That is a complete shift, and that will happen in the next 2 to 3 years. In this scenario, marketing becomes a searchlight for the business, dealing no longer in qualified leads, but directing the sales function in terms of who to talk to, when to do so, and what to talk about based on declared interest of the client. Even further than that, it's now possible to integrate and automate all of the information that's coming through those different channels, through the website, through the call center, through email communications, through face-to-face communications. Cognizant is now creating a platform for a major car manufacturer that enables them to put all of that information together. And the consequence for a customer is that I'm actually going to have a very, I hope, pleasant and coherent conversation with this car manufacturer, rather than just saying, you know, I've gone onto your website, I've had a call with somebody in the call center. All of that will be aggregated. But more powerfully for this company, I hesitate to mention it because it's confidential, it enables them to disintermediate the reseller. It enables them to create what are going to be called mobility-based services, of which the car is only a part. So what these car manufacturers are looking to do is to create a platform, which the car is a part, and monetize services on top of that. And this is enabling them to do that. So completely different business model. And all of the car manufacturers are aiming for this. And some of them will succeed and some of them won't. But they will be very, very different businesses and offering very different services within the next 4 to 5 years. So, where next? A unique characteristic of the next wave of digital transformation is the fact that it's now impossible to think of a robust business strategy for a major enterprise which is not focused on digital. And whether you're a retailer, bank, manufacturer, or logistics company, digital technology, digital information is core not only to what you offer, but to your business model. And marketing can only fulfill its strategic function when it's deeply connected to that strategy. And at Cognizant, this means I need to think completely differently about my marketing plan. Instead of just thinking about the programs and the targets that I'll be aiming for, I need to be thinking about an application platform, including content management and automation. I need to be thinking about the skills profile which supports the kind of work that marketing will be doing. At the moment, this includes the latest skills in Google to make sure that our brand can be easily found. But it will, in very short order, include analytics skills, and in time soon thereafter, in my mind, it will include anthropological and sociological skills. Because we need to understand the customer and what's driving them. The dreaded word content is also critically important because content marketing is a term that I really dislike because I don't think anybody talks about content in a normal daily life. They talk about information or ideas. But the ideas that marketing in large organisations will need to take to market will have to be highly sophisticated, very well thought through, written by domain experts in that field. So a completely different marketing model. And the performance indicators for marketing will need to relate closely to the sales cycle, more closely than ever before. So the first tenet of marketing is know your customer. And we need to acknowledge that there are some fundamental changes that are happening to each of us and to the way that we relate to each other. And this is particularly true of younger generations, of younger people. These are fundamental trends. So if you want to know your customer, there are certain fundamental shifts that we need to be cognizant of. The internet is atomizing us by blind choice into ghettos based on preferences and prejudices. And this is happening. You can see the political effects of it. As more human beings interact through exponentially more connections every day, the complexity of the world is becoming greater and greater and impossible to predict. Books like Thinking Fast and Slow show us that our minds work to pre-conscious default settings, which have always been very easily tricked, but now can be manipulated so much more easily by technology. And there's increasing evidence that reason, previously thought of as the faculty which makes humans so special, evolved as rationalization for its social utility. And in this reading, we use reason not as a means of establishing what is objectively true, but to justify what we already believe. The scope for reasoned debates is now being crowded out as internet and social media escalate emotions. Just look at the tennis final, the US Open final, Serena Williams. A dispute which would have been resolved on court becomes a massive global issue within hours. Whatever you think of the rights and wrongs of it, the Kavanaugh hearing just magnifies to the point where the truth of the issue becomes almost impossible to verify. And technology, unfortunately, is contributing to this. And some think that adults are being infantilized as a consequence of this, as we get swept up by trivia and our politicians are judged more on their gestures than their records of achievements and high office. And artificial intelligence is now able to intercede in the choices that we make, disintermediating the slow processing of the conscious mind. And most of us give up. We've already done it. I've done it. Given up what was a fairly poor directional sense to Google Maps a long time ago. And how many more choices are we going to be giving up along the way? So this is different. And for marketing, there is a severe risk that marketing is going to simply be encoded into the algorithms of these data companies. Now, all of this presents challenges at every level of society: legal, political, security, and to some extent, the marketing discipline might seem trivial against this background. But I believe that we have the chance to make all of this worse as marketers, or make it better, because we're all about making connections. And there's no question that marketing has been a prime abuser. There's no question of that at all, as I've already said. Just look at the way in which political candidates are marketed in the US and see how political culture has been debased. Look at the Russian interference in the 2016 US elections, which is arguably the most successful guerrilla marketing campaign in history. So we could do bad things with marketing, but now for me, I think there's more than ever a case for marketing that is based on human values. So as I said at the outset, marketing provides orientation, and it does so based on sound principles. The greater the complexity, and we are certainly seeing complexity, the more important these principles become. Know your customer, create something they need or want, make your offering clear and compelling, deliver value for money, easy for them to find, and follow through and keep them loyal. So I believe human connection is at the core of the first rule of marketing: know your customer. So look back to that boulangerie for inspiration. There is still space for unique insights into what makes us tick, and space for inspiration for unique creative ideas. Indeed, as machines intercede more and more, so the premium for human insights and inspiration will increase. Marketing can provide, in addition, coherence for enterprises to keep them focused on their customers, and we must resist the temptation of abusing new technologies as we orientate organisations to one of their prime purposes: satisfying their customers. Artificial intelligence is all about enabling autonomous decision making which can adapt to context. If our politics remains stable, and I keep my fingers crossed it will, consumer demand and regulation will ensure that consumers get to pick the decisions and the context. And crucially, we get to decide on what we share and why. And I believe this is going to be one of the most profound political issues of the next 10 years. Now, this might seem a curious slide to share just before I close, but as context and contingency come more into play, the more limited artificial intelligence becomes. Japanese culture is said to be highly contextual, where meanings are often implicit and are given by the most subtle of clues. The term wabi-sabi exemplifies this. Ask any Japanese person to define the idea, and in most cases you'll get a very puzzled expression. It's a feeling that they understand. They find very difficult to verbalise, even in Japanese. Watching Japanese people talk about it is fascinating. But certainly can't translate it into English. But it's an idea and a feeling that relates, as far as I can tell, to impermanence and transience. One person will describe a tree which is slightly distorted, another will talk about a king reflecting on all that he's lost, King Lear. The feeling comes from these ideas, but there's no English word to capture it, and there are no synonyms in Japanese. So the point of this story is that there's a human essence that can never be processed into an algorithm. We are meaning-seeking creatures who need purpose and fulfillment, and we look for significance. Therefore, I don't believe we can ever be satisfied or fulfilled by the outputs of algorithms, however sophisticated they are. And if marketing retains its higher purpose to orientate organisations towards their customers, this will require really knowing our customers without intruding. This means being respectful and empathetic, encouraging our enterprise to think of our customers as the human beings they are, with all the desires, distractions and frustrations we all experience on a daily basis, and finding ways to establish meaningful connections between the best your organisation can offer and the real concerns of your customers. So it's a consequence of this that I'm certain that the expectations which customers have for brands will increase, and that a suitably strategic marketing function is best placed to help enterprises see to it that those expectations are met and that the interests of customers are not abused. To achieve this, we need to aim high, engage deeply with our company's strategy, and have the strength of mind to keep things simple in the interests of the customers that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. I think we should have a broken mic up there to ask some questions. Maybe I will try and find one. Right, so I'm going to sit down and Guy, you handle the mic.
Karen Stewart, Virtual Company Marketers. Can you tell me how you see your day-to-day role as a Chief Marketing Officer will change in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I can. I think that the biggest change is that I will be spending all of my time looking at data and trying to understand what it's telling me. And that's already happening. It's actually quite an interesting cultural shift that I'm trying to get my team to get used to. We talk about insights that we can see from the data that's coming through. For example, which programs are working, why are they working, what are the conversion rates. And the reaction of one member of my team this week was, no, I'm not ready for this conversation, I haven't prepared. And I'll say, you don't have to prepare because you're actually thinking now. You're trying to understand this in order to respond. I'm not asking you to report on this. This is not about polishing the stone, as the Japanese talk about. It's actually trying to understand what's going on. So I think the biggest thing will be a CMO will be looking at readouts of data and mining that for insight in order to navigate where the company's going and how best to satisfy the company. Now, obviously, I don't imagine that I will be surrounded by screens every day, but the quality of that data and the insights we can derive from it and the extent to which we can apply those insights to the direction of the company will be fundamental to the CMO's role.
Andrew Miles, I'm Pastmaster Mark Shaw, but I'm Chairman of the Financial Services Group. Really interesting presentation, thank you. I grew up in FMCG and I've sort of ended up in technology. And one of the things I've noticed, as you sort of said, a lot of technologies have been used to reduce costs where we currently are, and almost dissociate companies from their customers and clients. We're just about to get a tsunami of AI, which will probably rip through the cost structure of many financial and professional services business. What would your advice be on trying to improve the user experience that you talked about? For your Sky example, I can mention Aon. I suppose we could do a lot, but how do we sort of maintain that user experience and manage it rather than just use it for cost control?
Yeah, I think, well, what I can see, and this is coming through what Cognizant is doing, alongside your data scientists as an organisation, you need to be talking to, in our case, employ anthropologists and sociologists and psychologists. So you'll see that Cognizant is unique. We've acquired companies that bring this expertise to bear, because unless you do understand the primary motivations of the human being you're trying to communicate with, you will fail. And Apple has been hugely successful, but one of the reasons is that through genius and insight, Steve Jobs was able to understand what would really make his customers excited. Now it's a data-driven company. It's not a product company anymore, it's a software company. And the vast majority of its revenue is coming through the software assets that it owns and the extent to which it's engaging. And I can guarantee that Apple is taking insights from highly qualified people who understand what business is. At a lower scale, I think it's using common sense and continue to listen to the customers. So don't get blinded by the data. I was talking to a colleague this week who specialises in AI, and he said, look, AI is the tip, it's beneath the iceberg. It's not something in itself that is important to the customer. User interfaces. And he gave an example, which was a coffee machine, where we're working with a vendor to apply artificial intelligence to face recognition, which puts all of that amazing technology to a fairly trivial task. It gives you the coffee that you like, based on what you look like. But the point he made was that artificial intelligence doesn't need to know anything more about you than what you look like. It doesn't need to know your address. It doesn't need to know your preferences. It just needs to know you well enough in order to make the right decision about coffee. And I think that's a key insight, that artificial intelligence is always applied to context, and context is key. And the artificial intelligence is never the thing that you see. The thing that you see is hopefully an interface that is very engaging and gives you an experience that's important. That's nothing to do with artificial intelligence. That, in our discipline, that's called customer experience and design. So you need to bring all of these things together. So I'm very optimistic, only if we remember the human side of this equation. You get lost in the data, which, as you see from the examples I've given, is very easy to do, then those companies will in time fail, or at the very least they're going to really alienate those customers. And hopefully through legislation, we'll start empowering customers to push back against some of the abuses that we all have to live with.
Anybody else wish to?
Hi, I'm Kristen Keatons from the University of London. I'm interested in the impact that these developments are having within marketing teams. So can you tell me, do you see a difference between younger marketers coming into your company versus people of our generation, I feel like I'm an old dog learning a new trick every day.
Yeah, I
So
do.
can you talk about
Yeah.
that, guys?
Yeah. So, yes, there are obvious changes, and as a senior marketer, you've really got to get to grips with that. The first and obvious one, well, there's two ones I'll point to and then develop it. The first is that the behaviours, natural behaviour and living style of millennials is very different from ours. And those millennials are going to represent increasing numbers of people that we're all going to sell to. So at one level, you really do need to understand how these technologies are interacting, because those are going to be the technologies you're going to need to use. And so, incredibly, Instagram is a technology that I think is of minimal value for large enterprises, but surprisingly is actually quite significant and increasingly so. And it is a very well established technology. So so you need to get to grips with the behavioural traits of younger people and engage with technology, and obviously employ them, because they understand much more readily how to apply these technologies and reach answers, and are happy to, what we say, fast fail, much more than older, more mature people are. And this idea of failure, trial and error, fast fail, and then eventually find things that work, comes much more readily to a younger, more experimental mind. But what I would say is that, on the other hand, I am quite struck by the lack of, so I see certain levels of excellence in graduates coming through, and certainly in adaptability, which I don't remember for myself. It took me a lot longer to get used to, but they seem to get used to it much more than I did. But what I think is lacking is a broader perspective, and so they tend to be less able to put things in a broad context and see potential implications of things. It's almost like the present has become a very, very short window on the world, where the present hopefully is a combination of past and future and current experience. It seems that breadth of perspective is relatively narrow, I would say. I mean, it's a generalisation, but I think that's one difference. So the constant positive of that is, if you are good enough to recognise that technology is king and that you need to employ talented people, then you can stay and work as a senior marketeer, because you've got perspectives that will not come readily. And obviously through maturity you're going to get that, but I think you've got perspectives on life and potential development that I think are critical. So I don't think that we'll just find ourselves out of work if we're good, but you have to be really good, and you do have to really engage with company strategy. You can't just be a demand generation team or an events team. You're going to find yourself out of work if that's the case. You really do need to aim high, in my opinion.
Mike Ricketts from Marketers. You're obviously very positive about the future of marketing, but do you see it continuing to exist as a standalone function, or do you see it as subsumed into other business?
Yeah, it's a really good question. To be honest, I can't answer that confidently, because I do think there is a really existential risk that marketing could be considered by other businesses as a job that's being done. I've got my data strategies, that's going to provide the insights that marketing would have done. So I think because it's an existential challenge, like all existential challenges, you've got to go to fundamentals to address it. And I think that's the point I'm making, is that the fundamentals of marketing are still as they were. They all are still about real insight to the customer, delivering value. And if you can maintain that perspective, and as I say, really engage in the company strategy of large organisation, then marketing still has a fundamental role. But if you allow it, as it did with customer relationship management, marketing in large organisations became a kind of off-the-hook lead generation. And it just, for a long period, became marginal. And one of the pleasures of coming to Fujitsu was that Philip was asking me to do proper strategic work. It was a simple question: the company wants to be established as well, or leader in technology, it's got an aggregation of different entities. How can you help? And that's a simple question, a very difficult thing to answer, but that was a big question. And I think as marketeers, we've got to aim for big questions and not get sidelined. But I do think it is a genuine existential risk, but there is a potential resolution to that risk.
Guys, thank you so much. John Baxter, Master Tallow Chandler, and for you, tallow is beef dripping. Tallow candles used to light the streets of London, and it would smell like a fish and chip shop.
So if that one's for me, what is it for you?
Absolutely. For me, it is actually fraternity and charity. I came here with some misgivings, thinking, and your Sky example I can fully understand. The one I love was your boulangerie, because actually the livery companies, because we're about fraternity, I tell my sons, I tell people I work with, life and business is a body contact sport. If you can't do it by body contact and interaction, looking into somebody's eyes, because in Scotland, if you shake somebody's hand, a man's word is a bond. If you're selling a house, once you've shaken hands on it, you can't go back. My father could never understand the English system of you agree a price, and then you spend 6 weeks later arguing. So there's something about, alongside, and I understand entirely the artificial intelligence side of the need to really use it to develop a greater understanding of the customer. Think of delivery companies as small deliveries. We are pretty small organisations as such. And you've set me thinking about how, as we look forward, how we market, and the words I thought were great were coherent and grounded. I think relevant. My delivery company was back 700 years, but people still want to come to us because we have a relevance today. I love the compass because you have the direction and know what you're doing. So if you were sitting in the boulangerie and the boulangerie owner came up and said, what do you think I should be doing next? I've been doing very well up until now, but what next? And I'm thinking about, and just to help me think forward, I was up in Exeter Market on a walking tour today, and that market 30 years ago had died, and now it's full of street food vendors, etc. And I thought again about boulangerie. So if you were coming into my delivery company, any thoughts that you've got that we should be thinking about, how we fit in with AI, but also don't lose the body contact?
Well, it's a big question. Certainly, and if I just think about the boulangerie, what I'd be saying to them, I think don't lose the essence of what you do, because obviously that's the thing that's kept you afloat. But one thing I think I can see, I was talking with one of our big clients is a retailer, and they do business face to face in the store, they do business online, and they could see that the customers who do business online and come into the store, which is a significant proportion, do a massively disproportionate contribution to their revenue, so the average value of their basket is higher. And so that retailer had established a relationship in inverted commas, that's an overstatement, but they were getting value from these two contacts. And so an inference for the boulangerie, at the very least, is to consider, looking at this from a data angle, is to look at the customers who are coming through and try and just look at it through a numbers lens to say, who is spending and who's at the top of that distribution curve? What characterises those people? How could I encourage more people who have those characteristics to do more of that? Now that's just, I don't think it requires some technology, but I don't think it's infinitely complex. But it applies that principle, because what they are doing, what the big retailers are doing, is essentially saying, if I can increase the average basket size from 10 to 12 pounds, then same for the boulangerie. So I think that, and then the implications of that then follow into how do you then promote, how do you dress the window, etc. I think the other thing I've always thought with small retailers is their outreach to their local community is normally fairly poor, and it's not that difficult to get a message out to everybody. You can use it through direct mail. I mean, if somebody sent me a very breezy picture of that laundry with some offer, just popped it through my letterbox into an audience, I'll probably go and have a look. So I think there are some fairly basic and achievable things that small businesses can do that would have significant difference. And then the final thing is I would take, know your customer. I'd take the trouble to go to one of those markets with the food stalls and just talk to people about why they're there and what their motivations are. And try and infer from that what you could do to meet those requirements. Now obviously one thing you can't do, well actually it's not entirely true. In St Albans market, some of the best retailers actually do food stalls in the market and they use that to promote themselves very well. So all sorts of things can follow from just thinking about the customer, particularly those who aren't doing business with you, and trying to draw influence as well.
Thank you, that was really interesting. My name is Lauren, I'm from the New Zealand Trade Commission, and also millennial, so thank you for your comments there.
Yep.
I've been working in marketing now for about 15 years and noticed huge changes just in terms of budgets, and I think with the onset of technology, it's so affordable now to create a quite simple and effective campaign, but I'm also feeling the stress of, I guess what I would term a plastic bag campaign. You know, it's like a single-use throwaway, pressure to get something out in response to data.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of manage your data with your budget, with your kind of ongoing goals of your organisation?
Right, so if I just make sure I answer the question right. So there's pressure to kind of just get short-term tactics out of the door. So is that fair? And then there's downward pressure on your budget as well. Those are the two factors, yeah. Well, yeah, downward pressure on my budget, and obviously I'm looking at this from a large enterprise standpoint. And I had a curious experience with it. So for the last 15 years, every time I present a budget, I'm presenting a budget which is the very best and the same as last year, normally less. And my first point is, this is how I'm using my budget better. And so that obviously is a discipline to get into. And actually with technology-based marketing, you're right, it is much cheaper to get ideas out to market much more quickly. Interestingly, I've experienced because Cognizant is a growth company, the first time in my life I presented a budget and said, no, you need to spend more money. Company's growing at 20% and make a big request. And I was talking about how I was going to efficiently manage my budget and I was to spend more money, so it was very nice. In terms of avoiding that, so I don't think you can avoid the fact your budget's going to go down. I think that's just a reality. In most organisations that's happening. The ways to mitigate that are, I think first answering your second question is how do you avoid that kind of tactical orientation. I think it's having a clear idea for what you think should be achieved. And one of the things that I think it's an axiom that anybody who's worked with me says, I used to say it, you don't have a Japanese conversation, have your conversation. And I say in marketing, you don't have a sales conversation, have a marketing conversation. So it's part of it is about, in your organisation, is getting to a point where you're telling them what you think marketing strategy is and what you think needs to be achieved by it. And that's not easily done, and it's normally done incrementally, because you are often being told to just do something to improve some effectiveness. But you've got to, over time, pull the conversation to the point where you're telling them, and then you're presenting tactics in the context of a strategy that you put together. Because it's always difficult if somebody says, just go and spend some money and show some return. You're always on the back foot, because as it's one of the examples I said in the speech, they're irrational demands. You know, the critical thing is to avoid irrational demands by you have your conversation. And that is less to do with kind of transactional conversation exchange. It's about building your stature and credibility. I find that when I go to a new company, they don't know what I can do. They assume that I know that I can do it because I've come there. But I have to build my credibility. But you normally start from a good place when you start in the company because you've just spoken to the CEO who's told you what the job's about, and that's why you're there. So for 6 months you can say, CEO told me this is the way it's going to be. So that's another influence, I think. It's just trying to get a good relationship with the person who's really running the organisation and making sure that we're aligned to those objectives. So it's not easy. You know, and I've been in the same situation. The solution is multifactorial, but gets out of your conversation rather than theirs.
I'm a past master of the marketers. I particularly liked your Sky anecdote, and it's really that which drives my question, which is, if you set aside Amazon and the social media platforms, there are a huge raft of technology companies, of which Sky is a good example. Do you think technology companies fully understand the strategic importance of marketing, or do you think they devalue it?
They do devalue it, and I say that in my own book. And I was reflecting on why they do. And if you look at FMCG, fast-moving consumers, marketing is in the business model. You can't reach customers, you can't promote to them unless you market. And whereas if you're in technology, the technology companies are very often run by autocrats who've grown up as the technologists. There's the CEO of Oracle. Story about he basically writes things. He's not interested in what anybody else has got to say. He's an autocrat. So technology companies see the world through technology, and they often have, certainly in the case of services marketing, a very expensive cost of sale, and therefore they trust, in many cases wrongly, their client-facing executives to do marketing intelligence to find where things are, because they're basically selling people-based services. So you've got autocrats, you've got technology perspective, you've got very expensive salespeople, very well qualified. Some of them do good marketing. So all of that means that marketing can very easily be relegated to relatively trivial functions. And I don't see that changing. And when I looked for my next job after Cognizant, so I left IBM because I said I'm directing traffic. I'm a director and I'm about to be a VP, but I don't think I'm directing anything. Whereas at Fujitsu, I was given the job to direct, set the direction. And the same at Cognizant. So I think you've got to pick your technology companies and make sure that they've got a big problem that needs addressing, that only marketing can address. But I don't, given the nature of the people who create technology companies, I don't think you see that changing very quickly.
Is there a final question before the master concludes? If not. Right, well, it only remains, as I said, to thank you very much. I thank you all for coming. I'll thank the Master Baker in his absence, his club is around for actually hosting us, and all the staff who are now going to look after you. And I think we should adjourn partly next door, partly feel there'll be some space in here for drinks, canapes, and further discussion. I should say, finally, I've had my Sky experience too, just today. But I won't tell you that. Okay, thank you very much, and there we are.